Hey guys, welcome back to Token Tech. Now, I debated about making this video, and as you can tell probably from the thumbnail and the title, this is about the 1650. This graphics card really shouldn't exist at the price it does, and I mean, I don't think anyone is surprised from that, but I didn't really want to make a video about it because it's not worth talking about, right? This card is pathetic, and the much better card and better value is the RX 570. So I'd much rather be making a video right now about the RX 570 and telling you how great it is, how good of a value it is, and how if you need, a cheap graphics card that actually can play games, go out and buy a 570. And I'll probably still make that video, but I feel like I have to make this video as well. So why am I making this video? Well, three things. One, a new graphics card came out, the 1650, and as I said already, it's very, very pathetic. It's just not that great of a graphics card. It's not very fast at all. It's slower than cards that are cheaper than it, so the price is too high. And yeah, I just don't understand why it's here, except for one specific scenario, and we'll get into that in just a second. The second reason why I'm making this video is because it showcases how Nvidia is yet again being anti-consumer. So something that some of you may or may not know, I'm sure if you've seen any reviews on this card, you probably know, they did not provide reviewers with day one reviews. Sorry, with day one drivers to be able to do a day one review, right? Nvidia was hiding something. They didn't want, when all of us got up that day, to see our YouTube sub box filled with videos talking about how bad this card was and how you shouldn't buy it. So they didn't give them drivers to be able to have day one reviews, so these people had to just wait until they could get a public driver to be able to do a review, which means there are probably some people who went out and bought an Nvidia 1650 thinking it was a good deal, thinking that it was faster than a 570, right? And actually ended up with something that was slower than a 570 and paid more for it. So that's very anti-consumer. It's bad for the reviewers because it means they have to be late to the party with their reviews, and it's bad for the consumer because, like I said, people may have purchased that card before they were able to see a review of it. Now, that might be their fault for not waiting, but still, it's the fact that Nvidia didn't do this and basically BS'd about it, saying how, well, we're doing this in terms of unity because they wanted everything to be released at once, which doesn't make sense because they never did that with anything else. But hey, whatever. So anti-consumer Nvidia seems to fit the bill. But the real issue, the real thing that pushed me over the edge, that really ticked me off, was the fact that there are some people out there who are so either brainwashed or such a devout follower of Nvidia, they are justifying or defending this graphics card. Now, I did say there was one use case, and this one use case is if you have or you're planning on purchasing a used office PC like a Dell or an HP or something, something that didn't have a graphics card, might have an i5 or an i7 in it, used just for basic computing tasks in an office. You can get them pretty cheap, under $200 on eBay, usually with 8 gigs of RAM and sometimes with SSDs. Well, this is probably your best option for that because the base version of the card only uses 75 watts, has no external connector for a power supply. So you just pop it into the PCIe slot and it should just work. In terms of cards that can do that, if we're just looking at that, so the only cards that don't need a power connector, this is the fastest one you can get, right? I think there's like 750 Ti's who don't need it. I think there's some 1050s that don't need it. I think obviously the GT 1030 doesn't need a power connector. This is faster than all those cards. So in that very specific small scenario, this card kind of makes sense. However, it's still overpriced, and that's kind of what I want to talk about here, is that even if you're in that situation, you might be better off picking up a used 1050 or a used GT 1030 for dirt cheap on eBay versus spending a ton of money, $150 on a 1650. And again, none of these reviewers were sampled the base models. So all of the benchmarks that show the card being very pathetic and underwhelming are best case scenario for people who have a power connector that they're going to plug it into their power supply and overclock it and all that stuff. Without that power connector, the card's going to run even slower, meaning you're getting even less performance. And it's $150. I don't understand how anyone can justify this. You can get a 570 for $130, and it wipes the floor with it. No problem at all. And the cards that have the power connector, right, the 1650s with the power connector, are like $180, and that's very close to a 4GB RX 580. In fact, there are some, if you pay attention, you'll see some deals of a 4GB RX 580 for 180 or 170 bucks with free games, and it will just destroy a 1650. I actually got into an argument because I posted a comment on one of these videos, and I said, how much you want to bet that the 1650 will still outsell RX 570? Because, if you pay attention to these things, it's no surprise that people seem to buy Nvidia. Among enthusiasts, right, so people like us, it's about 50-50, right? We just go for whatever is the best price at the time. If we can get a deal, pick up used, we go for that. But for the vast majority of PC gamers who are not enthusiasts, they seem to just buy Nvidia and don't believe that AMD actually has competitive offerings, especially in this low, not low range, but kind of lower middle range, right? Well, someone argued me on that. They said, yep, you're right, because this is the budget card to get. And I replied like, oh, I forgot how, being slower and more expensive makes you the budget offering, right? Makes you the budget card to get. And his reply was something along the lines of, it's still a good card, and the power difference, and, people who don't have a power connector. And I, argued him. I was like, no, that's a very niche, small group of people who need this specific version, and it'll perform even worse. And the power difference doesn't even make sense because, yeah, there's a power difference. There's also a performance difference, right? You're paying a little bit more power, but you're getting a lot bit more performance. And then he wanted to make an argument, and this went on for a little while, that, the power difference alone makes up for it, because if you ran both computers, so both graphics cards and identical computers, for 2 years at 100% load for 24/7, meaning all day, all night, every day, for 2 years straight, at, the average like 13 cents per kilowatt hour, this Nvidia card, the 1650, would save enough money, remember, after 2 years, that you would be able to buy a second 1650. And again, he's going by the $150 price, not the actual like $180 price of the card being tested. But the thing is here, he's talking about a super unrealistic situation, running a computer 24/7 at 100% load for 2 years. That doesn't happen. And even cryptocurrency miners, when they were using graphics cards, they would underclock and undervolt their cards to save power. So even though they were running 24/7, they were running at like 50% power. So this scenario really doesn't come up ever. No one does this. And let's just get this straight. After 2 years of 24/7 operation at 100% load, there's only a difference of $150? That's actually really, really small. I thought it would be larger. So that argument was dead in the water. The only scenario are those few people who buy a used Dell Omniplex from eBay, figure out, oh my goodness, it has a unique power supply, and I can't use a generic power supply with this motherboard, and it doesn't have a connector for a graphics card, and for whatever reason you can't sell it yourself or get rid of it or return it in any way, so you are stuck with it. So you buy this card, pop it in there, and have a decent, I guess, kind of mediocre gaming experience. Outside of that, it really has no chance. But people like him continue to argue this, that the power difference alone makes up for it, and that you should buy the 1650 just because it saves you power, even though it's less performance and more expensive. Again, they don't factor that into it. That, all right, let's say you spend a little bit more on power, you save 20, 30, 40 bucks going with a 570. There you go. Oh, you needed to buy a slightly more powerful power supply? You save 20 to 40 bucks buying a 570, and 500 watt power supplies are what, 25, $30? They're really cheap. So it doesn't hold any water. So basically, I felt compelled to make this video more of a venting, ranty session, just to talk about how, you know, brand loyalty is so strong. I guess these are called fanboys. I don't know. I guess that's what that is, where these people are just, they deny reality. They deny reality to support whatever company they want to support. I'm not saying AMD fans don't do it too. I'm just saying that it's, when it's obvious, right? And it's not even as close. Like, people might say people do the same thing with like Radeon 7 and try to say how good Radeon 7 is. Well, Radeon 7 is actually good, and it's actually priced appropriately, right? It's $700, but usually you can find it on sales for $650 or even $620. I've seen that before. And it competes with the 1080 Ti, and it competes with the 2080, which are all priced around that same price point as well. So it makes sense. Now, I'm not going to go out there and say it's better. It's not better than those cards, but it's competitive. Vega, now that the prices have dropped, is extremely competitive, and everything at the low end is, I would say, not only competitive but wins out. It's just funny when, you know, the shoe's on the other foot. Now, Nvidia fans are doing the same thing, but I'd say a little bit more egregious. Like, you can't really, I don't think anyone can defend the 1650. Anyways, those are my thoughts on it. Let me know what you think of the 1650. I think it's a trash product, only for those very few people who need it. Although buying a used 1050 will probably do you better in terms of value. Anyways, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know how you think. See ya.